Welcome back to Billionaire Success Lessons, the channel where we go beyond money, beyond fame to discover what success really costs, what it truly means, and what powerful lessons we can learn from the people who changed the world. Today we are talking about Mark Zuckerberg, one of the most influential, controversial. When most people hear his name, they instantly think of Facebook, social media, enormous wealth, and a man who became successful at an age when many people are. But if you only look at the final picture, you miss the real story, because the real It is about seeing a shift in human behavior, before almost anyone else saw it clearly. It is about building under pressure, growing under criticism, surviving mistakes in public, and continuing to move forward while the entire world watches every step you take. Mark Zuckerberg was born on May 14, 1984, in White Plains, New York. Long before he became one of the most recognized names in technology, he was He later attended Phillips Exeter Academy, and then enrolled at Harvard University in that early part of his life matters because success rarely begins with applause. It usually begins in curiosity, obsession, and the quiet habit of learning more than. He was not powerful yet, but the habits that would shape his future were already there. He was fascinated by technology not just as entertainment, but as a tool for building. At Harvard, he was surrounded by intelligence, competition, and opportunity. The difference between a talented student and a world-changing founder is action. On February 4, 2004, Mark Zuckerberg launched the Facebook.com, a platform. Within just 2 weeks, about half the student body had signed up. That is one of When a product solves a real human need, growth can happen with astonishing speed. People did not rush to Facebook because of marketing genius alone. They rushed to it because it gave them something they immediately understood. The original version was simple, but the deeper instinct behind it was powerful. He was tapping into a basic human desire to be seen, connected, and socially mapped. His roommates, Dustin Moskovitz and Chris Hughes, helped him add features and expand. Soon, what began as a college directory started becoming something much bigger. It spread beyond Harvard, then to other universities, then to high schools, and from the very beginning, Facebook stood out, partly because of its focus on real. That was one of Zuckerberg's key instincts. He believed that online interaction could become more powerful when it was tied to. This may sound obvious now, but at the time, it was not. The internet was still evolving, and social networking had not yet become the central. Mark Zuckerberg was helping shape that future while still in his early 20s. In the summer of 2004, Zuckerberg and his co-founders moved to Palo Alto, California. This is where his story stops being merely interesting and starts becoming risky. It is. It is another thing to leave a prestigious university, move across the country, and bet. That kind of decision reveals a deeper truth about success at certain moments. Vision, not safe commitment, total commitment. Mark Zuckerberg made the kind of choice that builders staked their lives on them. Soon, serious money began to appear. Peter Thiel provided seed funding, and in 2005 Facebook received a major infusion of. The company was growing quickly, but that growth also brought temptation. Around that time, Zuckerberg turned down a $1 billion buyout offer from Yahoo. $1 billion is enough to convince most people that the game is over, that the But Mark Zuckerberg said no, whether people admire or criticize him. That decision. He believed the company he was building could become much larger than what the Many people work hard enough to create an opportunity. Far fewer have the conviction to refuse the first huge reward because they believe that. By 2007, Microsoft invested in Facebook, and by 2008, Zuckerberg's net worth was already. In 2012, after Facebook's initial public offering, his fortune rose dramatically. Wealth is the visible result. Vision, endurance, and timing are the invisible causes. The deeper achievement was that Facebook had become one of the defining platforms of the. What started as a college network had become the largest social network on Earth. Facebook eventually became the largest social network in the world, with nearly. That scale is difficult to fully imagine. It means Zuckerberg did not simply create a. He helped reshape how billions of people communicate, share, organize relationships. And this is where Mark Zuckerberg's story becomes more complicated and more human. Because building something powerful is not the same as controlling all the consequences. Many success stories become shallow because they only talk about wins, but real life is. Facebook's rise brought extraordinary influence, but it also brought scrutiny, as questions about privacy, questions about responsibility, questions about what happens when a tool designed to connect people also becomes a. These were not small challenges. They became some of the defining crises of Zuckerberg. It is not only a story of creation, it is also a story of leadership under pressure. One of the most difficult public moments came in 2018, when a whistleblower exposed how Facebook user data had been shared without user. That same year, Zuckerberg was called before the U.S. Senate to address how the company had mishandled user data and how the platform. In his prepared testimony, he admitted that the company had been too slow and that those years were brutally important for his development as a leader. Because early success tests your skill, but Public failure tests your character. It is much harder to lead when your company is accused of helping create harm at a global scale. Zuckerberg had to face the world not just as a founder, but as a symbol of the There is a painful lesson here that applies far beyond technology. Sometimes success you start by solving one problem, and then your success creates 10 new ones you never. He helped build a system that became one of the most influential communication. But infrastructure changes society, and once society begins moving through your platform, that does not erase the brilliance of the original achievement, but it does deepen the story. It reminds us that the higher you rise, the heavier the weight of responsibility. It is about what you do when your invention begins affecting the world in ways you did. Meta's broader corporate history shows how Facebook expanded into a much larger company. WhatsApp and Messenger, while the parent company later became Meta Platforms. That mattered because Zuckerberg was no longer leading a single social website. The scale of the enterprise became extraordinary, but once again, scale did not. Bigger platform, bigger expectations, bigger reach, bigger criticism, bigger influence. This is one of the hardest truths in any great success story. The more powerful the Zuckerberg's wins became public, his mistakes became public, his pivots became public. He was building while being judged in real time by governments, media, users. Then came another dramatic chapter. In October 2021, Facebook changed the name of. That moment reflected a stronger emphasis on the metaverse. At that moment, Zuckerberg was once again doing something that defines ambitious builders. He was trying to move before the rest of the world fully agreed on where the future was going. He believed the next era of the internet might involve immersive, virtual. Too many people, that looked bold to others, it looked premature. Either way, it was unmistakably Zuckerberg, willing to bet large, willing to sound, willing to push the company toward a future that was not yet comfortable or obvious. But the metaverse bet did not unfold smoothly. As of October 2022, Meta had incurred $13.7 billion in losses that year while also facing low engagement and quality issues with its metaverse applications. That is important because it reveals another core truth about Mark Zuckerberg's story. He did not become successful by making only easy, popular, guaranteed decisions. He repeatedly made large, difficult bets. Some paid off brilliantly, others did not. In 2023, Zuckerberg said the company was pivoting away from the metaverse as its central focus, while keeping metaverse work for more targeted audiences. This ability to pivot matters. A person obsessed with ego keeps defending the old. There is a powerful lesson in that chapter. Alone, people often imagine success as Real success often demands correction. It demands knowing when to insist and when to adapt. It demands enough confidence to try something massive, and enough humility to. Mark Zuckerberg's career shows both traits. He can be relentless, but he has also shown that even one of the most powerful founders in the world still pressure and reality. That is a mature lesson for anyone building anything important. Vision is not stubborn. Vision is long-term commitment combined with the willingness to learn. Of course, Zuckerberg's story also includes criticism that has continued well beyond 2018. Meta has faced ongoing scrutiny over privacy, misinformation, hate speech, Federal Trade Commission imposed a record $5 billion penalty on Facebook, saying the company had deceived users about their ability to control the privacy of. That moment showed just how large the stakes had become. Zuckerberg was no longer simply. He was the leader of a company powerful enough to face historic penalties and global scrutiny. For many people, that kind of pressure would break them. It would crush focus. But Zuckerberg remained at the center of the company, continuing to guide product. And this is where his journey becomes deeply meaningful. Because even if people disagree about his decisions, it is impossible to ignore the. It is one thing to build a startup under pressure from investors. It is another thing entirely to lead a global technology giant while facing political pressure, legal pressure, public distrust, employee criticism, and shifting. Most people will never experience that level of pressure, but they can still understand. If you want to build something extraordinary, you must be prepared for success to become heavy. The higher your influence rises, the more your mistakes matter. The greater your. Today, Mark Zuckerberg remains founder, chairman, and CEO of Meta. He is responsible for setting the overall direction and product strategy for the. That matters because it tells us that his story is still unfolding. He is not simply a. He is still actively shaping one of the largest technology companies in the world. Whether the next great chapter belongs to social media, AI, smart glasses, messaging, or something else entirely, Zuckerberg remains one of the few people on Earth with and influence to help shape that future. So what is the deeper meaning of Mark Zuckerberg's success story? It is not just it is that he saw human behavior changing before most people recognized how big that. He committed fully. He turned down the easy exit. He stayed when things became. He made massive bets. He survived public mistakes. He changed course when necessary. That does not make his story simple. It makes it real. Real success stories are rarely clean. They are complicated, costly, and often uncomfortable. That is exactly why they matter. For anyone listening right now on Billionaire Success Lessons, there is. First, start before you feel fully ready. Facebook was not born as a perfect global empire. It started as a small product for a small group of students. Second, when you see real Zuckerberg did not treat his opportunity like a hobby. He built around it. Third, do. Many of the people who changed the world looked strange in the beginning. Fourth, understand. If you build something powerful, the burden will grow with it. And finally, learn how to. Technology changes, public trust changes. If you refuse to learn, you become trapped by. Mark Zuckerberg's life also reminds us that genius is not enough. Timing is not enough. What sustains great builders is the willingness to stay in the arena when the dorm room is glamorous in hindsight. The IPO is glamorous in hindsight. But the middle chapters are where the truth lives. The criticism, the scrutiny, the loneliness of being responsible for decisions too large for most people to. And that is why his journey continues to fascinate the world, because it is not. It is a story of endurance under the unbearable visibility of modern success, and maybe your dream does not need to look polished at the start. Maybe it only needs. Maybe your first version does not need to impress everyone. Maybe it only needs to. Maybe your path will include misunderstanding, criticism, or pressure. That does not mean you are failing. It may mean you are building something real enough. Mark Zuckerberg's story is not a fairy tale. It is not a perfect rise from talent to. It is the story of what happens when a young builder creates something powerful, discovers that power comes with consequences, and keeps adapting anyway. So when you look at Mark Zuckerberg, do not only see the billionaire, see the student. See the leader who refused the early buyout. See the entrepreneur who stayed under fire. See the builder who kept moving through criticism, privacy scandals, political. Whether you admire every decision or not, the scale of the journey is undeniable. It takes rare conviction to build something that changes the behavior of billions of people. And it takes even rarer endurance to keep carrying that responsibility after the world. In the end, Mark Zuckerberg's story teaches us that modern success is not only about. It is about responsibility. It is about knowing that every breakthrough creates a new burden. It is about choosing to keep building when the world has already formed opinions about. And it is about understanding that the road from startup to global influence is never. It is a road of risks, consequences, recalculations, and hard lessons, but for. This is the heart of today's message on Billionaire Success Lessons. Build boldly. And never assume that pressure means you should stop. Sometimes pressure is simply the price of building something big enough to matter. And sometimes the people who leave the strongest mark on the world are the ones who